Kelly, are you a Castlevania guy?
Not as much as you, but I like it.
But how much would you be willing to pay to be a Castlevania guy?
$4,000 if it was a
I got a
legitimate.
deal for you. Welcome back to Bog Panda, everybody. I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything, and joining me as always.
Hi, everybody. This is Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram. And fun fact, Mike, I'm sure none of our listeners care, but thought I'd share with you. Not sure why we're recording doing it, but I'm going to do it that way anyway. Recent shows I was editing, getting our stuff ready to go. I've just started to give my first name when we do introductions. But my Twitter account is KELLYTHUL. But I've caught myself on several editions going, my name's Kelly at KELLY on Twitter. Like I'm super cool. I can get my name on Twitter.
The
But
only Kelly.
I'm the only Kelly. I got, not willing to pay for that blue check mark, but I'm Kelly. but I'm not. But we would greatly appreciate it if you folks would subscribe to the Bog Panda YouTube channel, which is at Bog Panda on YouTube. By the way, Bog Panda YouTube channel is the home of Hard No, the world's shortest podcast. And if you haven't subscribed to that playlist, you certainly need to, because you will only give up less than a minute a day to keep up to date on all that is Hard No, the world's shortest podcast. So that's on Bog
It's
Panda.
short, but it's hard.
And it's no. And so leave us a comment or two, subscribe, and maybe check out our merch store.
Absolutely. Well, tonight we're going to talk about the Odyssey that's been unfolding over on Madlittlepixel's channel. Really fun retro gaming content that he has over there. He had pointed out an eBay listing. So Castlevania games, for anybody who doesn't know, how could you not know? It's a classic game series. Been around forever. It's hit pretty much every format. There are dozens of games and spin-offs and remakes and reboots, and there's even casino games and everything else based on it. A Netflix series, anything you can imagine, they make Castlevania on that. One of the more popular.
Did you know you can play Doom on Castlevania?
Yeah, you can play Doom in Castlevania. One of the lesser known in the US for a long time, but one of the important games in the franchise is Dracula X. I say important because probably the most popular Castlevania game is Symphony of the Night, which was for PlayStation. That game almost immediately was going for multiple times its value and secondary resale. Castlevania games tend to hold their value really well. If you're a collector, even now, if you go and find like old Castlevania games, not even the rare ones, they're usually marked much higher than other cartridge games of their era. If you can find Symphony of the Night, it goes for quite a bit. Dracula X, though, is one of my favorites, if not my favorite. It was for TurboGrafx 16, which means it was mostly ignored by people here in America because TurboGrafx 16 wasn't nearly as big here as it was in Japan. The game itself actually didn't even get an official American release until the TurboGrafx 16 Mini was released here, and it was included with that. But you could get it import copies and things like that. It's actually the game that precedes timeline-wise Symphony of the Night, which is the most popular and successful game in the franchise. Symphony of the Night is a direct sequel to this game. Picks up exactly at the end of it. In fact, you recreate the ending of that game in the beginning of Symphony of the Night. You do the boss fight again. That's how the game starts, doing the boss fight from Dracula X. There was an attempt to remake it for Super Nintendo. Not as great when you do it. That one was just released as Dracula X, whereas the full title of the original one is Dracula X Rondo of Blood. The one that is just shortened the Dracula X for Super Nintendo. It's good. It's a fun game. But it just doesn't recreate. TurboGrafx had a crazy color palette and a really good video card, and some of the animations and colors Super Nintendo just couldn't recreate on there, including like full animated cutscenes and things like that that are missing. The game is great though. It goes for quite a bit on the secondary market. Even if you're getting a used copy, you can expect to pay hundreds of dollars for it if you want a physical copy of this game. Or, as some people have found, $4,000 on an eBay listing, which is pretty steep. Even if you're a big Castlevania collector and it's a fully packaged new in box copy, $4,000 is pretty a lot of money. But what made this one stand out is it was graded by the company WATA, who does video game grading for collectors. Now, what are your thoughts on like grading collectors items and things like that?
So up until this little drama here, I would have said that's a good thing to kind of be able to get a trusted third party to come in, because on a lot of these collectible things, whether it's retro games or baseball cards, coins, etc., having a trusted third party who's disinterested in the actual sale come in and say, this is about where we grade it, I think is a great way to protect the seller and buyer, to let the seller get the value they should get, and let the buyer know what they're getting. So I think as a concept, I think it's very good. I think what we're starting to see is, as an execution, if they're not exactly on the ball, then it's worthless.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I feel about it too. I like the idea of it, but I, even prior to this, and for different things, for I've seen these for comic books and cards and different things, and you get different things where there's people who question how good some of this grading really is, and because you are going to find things that slip through the cracks that aren't the originals, that are getting passed off as such. And that apparently is what this is. As Madlittlepixel pointed out, this is clearly a reproduction that was done by a TurboGrafx fan site, who had done reproduction packaging and had sold some of these, and it had all the telltale signs of their reproduction packaging and not the original game on there. Which, if they could just tell, and he wasn't the only person who pointed this out, as he mentioned, other people had brought it to his attention as well. If people can just see in an eBay listing that this is clearly a reproduction, it seems strange that this game grading company let all of these obvious telltale signs slip by them. Also, it calls into question their actual grading, because they did things like grade the disc itself when it's supposedly a new unopened copy of the game. So how is that possible? Things like that. And then, of course, and he didn't really point any fingers. He just pointed out, there's no way to know if the seller actually knows this or not.
Right.
The seller might not even be aware of that. Cut to the second video that he made, and the seller had contacted him, threatening to sue him if he didn't pull down his initial video. It seems from the email that he'd read that it's they had just copied and pasted a generic boilerplate cease and desist kind of thing. It wasn't an attorney that was reaching out, it was the seller themselves. So, but it does start to call into question then, that if that's their first reaction to it, were they duped and paid a huge amount of money for it, or are they aware that this was a reproduction, or both? Were they duped and then trying to dupe someone else to get their money back? It just raises a lot of interesting questions about it. And then there was finally a third video, where he heard back from the TurboGrafx site confirming that that was one of their copies and not an original copy. And they further pointed out that a really quick way to tell for an unopened game is that all the TurboGrafx games had pull tabs on their plastic wrapping, which this does not have. So it is clearly just from the packaging itself, just from the plastic wrap around it, not an original copy.
Yeah, and this could be a whole new Netflix series. This whole thing that's kind of going on with it. So first of all, Madlittlepixel, if you've not subscribed to his channel, you absolutely should. I love this guy's energy on it, because it's kind of like, whatever, he's just kind of, he said, I'm just telling you what I think. it's this idea. You can tell he cares and he knows what's going on, but he's just kind of also a little laid back. It's just awesome. I just always enjoy his stuff. So props to Madlittlepixel. Yeah, and then not props to the eBay poster who did do the cut and paste, because he did the whole Animal House. I repeat your name here. There's like insert your email. The parentheticals are in the cut and paste. It's like maybe that would have been a good place for you to insert your email. So not a great execution of a cut and paste by the poster, but yeah, he offered a variety of things. The recreator, reprogrammer of the game contacted him. I think also in the mix, because all sort of the drama at some point, WATA got in the mix and say, well, yeah, we kind of at some point thought the packaging was a little hinky and we wanted it back to kind of reset our grades on this. And so it seems like a lot of hands in cookie jars were caught in this whole process.
Yeah.
But I think a very reasonable, not hard to figure out flag is the whole, how can you rate the quality of a disc on a sealed copy? It's just that, and the quality of the manual on a sealed copy. It's just that's not gonna happen. So, but it was interesting. It was interesting that the guy kind of pushed back. Those apparently those eBay ads are no longer up, which either means that somebody decided better back off of it, or they sold them. I mean, who knows? But it seems like a dicey situation. And it was interesting because I wasn't really familiar with this whole kind of recreation, reprogram world there. But I guess some of the groups that are out there actually take some steps that when they do that, the box art and the delivery is really significantly different enough to, you still know it's the game and it's a connection there, but they've also taken some steps to say, in case you thought this was the original copy, it's not. And I'm going to make it super clear to you on that. So, but it was an interesting thing. Would like to offer that Bog Panda will authenticate things for you. So like if you've written a poem and you want to send it in to us, we will grade it and we will send it back to you and we will stand behind our grading.
We accept Atari tokens for grading.
We do. Well. Exclusively.
Exclusively accept Atari tokens. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be learned here. And like you had mentioned, somebody with some sort of connection to WATA did reach out to him and say they are kind of aware of this situation with this particular game, where after it had gone back out, they kind of realized, hey, maybe we made some mistakes there, and asked for it back and were told no. And that I don't necessarily blame the person, because this is where, even if they realize they made a mistake after the fact, this is why maybe you shouldn't just blindly trust those kind of things. But like Kelly said, it's tough because, like Kelly said, it's good to have something like that in place, but I mean, they're not infallible. Even if they're really good at their jobs, they're going to miss one here and there, and something like this can happen. And it's just such an extreme example because it's a rare game to begin with, and it's a Castlevania game, and these games resell for large amounts of money. Even the repackaged ones and things like that, like, limited run games did the anniversary collections and things like that. Those were immediately sold out and going for hundreds more online than they originally sold for within days of selling out. So, I mean, these are things that are especially hot on the resale market. So it's something where somebody could easily be taken advantage of with something like a Castlevania game.
Yeah, I'm going to push back on one thing, is that Bog Panda is infallible. And so if you do send things to us, whatever it is, and we grade it, it's rock solid. Just you can trust us.
We have Jesus on our side.
That's right. He's appeared in many of our videos. So yeah.
These are facts.
Yes. Go back and check. Matter of fact, as the featured video for this video, we'll make sure that we provide evidence.
But yeah, I mean, I think the main takeaway is to always obviously just be careful when you're doing anything like this. Personally, no matter what the game is, I don't think I'd be putting $4,000 out for anything.
Nope.
As much as I love Castlevania, there's other ways to play this game that aren't going to cost you $4,000. You could even track down a TurboGrafx 16 Mini, which go for a lot right now because they stopped producing those. So that'll set you back a couple $100 if you really want to put a lot of money out for this, and that'll get you an official way to play it. So
I wouldn't even spend $4,000 to have a small theater group reenact Night Trap in my living room. So
I might spend $4,000.
Yeah, actually, now I think about it, maybe I would, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Well, as we mentioned before, really do appreciate it. It helps the channel out if you folks subscribe. Do leave us comments, help us understand what kind of content. I know you'll want more Doom. We'll get on it. Trust us. We're on it totally. So thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.